It's no secret that writing can be one of the most difficult things that we ever ask a student to do, meaning that similarly, it can be one of the most difficult things to teach. We can show students examples of successful writing all day long, but often that will not be enough. Students will simply take one look at this exemplary piece of writing, roll their eyes, and say, "Okay, how am I supposed to do that?" Well, that's the tricky thing. You can't just open your laptop and expect to bang out a perfect 5-paragraph essay. And we shouldn't teach our students that that is a reasonable expectation. The truth is that there are few people that are capable of creating a written masterpiece on the spot, and most successful pieces of writing require thorough planning. When I was walking around our middle school classroom a few weeks ago, the students were working on their research projects, and I noticed that many of them felt confused and directionless. I watched as one student stared at a blank computer screen, clearly not knowing how to proceed. So I asked him, "Hey, do you need some help?" The student explained that he didn't know how to get started on his assignment. He had several tabs opened with his sources and a few ideas of what he wanted to talk about in the paper, but no real plan of how it would all come together. I gave the student a few ideas of how to organize his thoughts, but at the end of the day, I had to deliver some tough news. You might not be quite ready to start writing the paper yet. So, all of that being said, this is what I believe about the teaching of writing. Planning matters. When I was in school, I was taught about the writing process. Pre-writing, drafting, editing, we've heard it all before. However, I never really learned how crucial pre-writing really is, and how a paper can completely fall apart if it isn't done thoroughly. I believe that planning is, in many ways, the most important step in the writing process. Everything depends on whether or not you have carefully considered each point in the paper, complete with the evidence that you intend to use as support. In my experience, it is crucial to have a written plan of what the paper is going to consist of, and it means that the actual writing part will be much more painless. This is my personal method of pre-writing, which I plan to share with my students in the future. First, I go through the text I am working with and make a running list of my observations. Oftentimes, I notice connections between these observations right off the bat, meaning that my thesis statement essentially creates itself. As you can see, I made a ton of observations on this poem that I plan to write about, and not everything ended up making it into the final paper. If I didn't plan before I started writing, I probably wouldn't have known which points were important and which were irrelevant. You can only discover these things through the planning process. Next, after I make a list of my observations, I go through them and identify my thesis statement. Like I said, it usually seems to write itself, as my observations usually have some sort of common thread that is connecting them all together. Then, I rewrite my main points onto a separate piece of paper. This time, it is more organized into an outline format. Now, I can clearly see my thesis, my main points, and the evidence that I will use as support. At this point, all of the hard, analytical work is done. All I have left is putting my thoughts into words. I totally understand that most students aren't excited about having to spend extra time doing strenuous planning for a paper that they're already dreading. But I believe that thorough planning ultimately helps the paper to be more organized and allows the student to feel less anxious about their performance. Pre-writing isn't even on the radar of many student writers, but I believe that it is the easiest way to alleviate some of the confusion associated with writing. Pre-writing should not be a secret known only to the most astute writers, so I will explicitly teach my students how to use it to skyrocket their success. After all, every student has the potential to be a masterful writer. They just need the tools to do so.